My heart had dropped to my chest, and I seemed to be frozen in fear. Up ahead of me, I could see him. He was caught in an eddy, swirling around and around, unable to go in the direction that we wanted to. It felt like an eternity later, but I finally saw him pop up the other side and miraculously head in the direction we were planning on. I was through the rapids just after, and I steered my kayak over to him and hang on to his hand for dear life as we rode with the current to the end of our adventure. There comes a time in life when if you're never willing to take risks, if you're never willing to get uncomfortable, you will never grow. If you do not accept change and even embrace it, you will miss out on so much. Beautiful experiences, people, memories will be lost to you forever. Many people need to be challenged to grow, to reach beyond themselves and welcome the growth that they have as the opportunities present themselves. Before I met my husband, I was not a risk taker. I was perfectly happy with my colored inside the lines little box that my life was. Control was my friend. And as long as everything in my life was within my control, I was happy. It was a lovely life, but not an adventure-filled life. And then along came Michael. He loves adventure. There are many things that he wants to do in his life that are filled with adventure. And he knows that it is best when somebody who is closest to you comes along with you on that adventure. The summer before he proposed to me, he set forth the idea that we take a 2-day kayak trip. There was an inlet near to his house where he lived on the ocean that if we started at the head of and traveled up the first day, we could turn around and travel back the next day, and it would be a nice little trip. I agreed as long as it was going to be a nice little trip, and we set forth to plan that. Now, the first day was a good day. We had a very sapid journey. And when we got on the water the next day, however, we found that our plans of turning around and going back were not going to happen. The wind was blowing ferociously behind us, and the current that comes in and out of the inlet was traveling at such a fast pace that we would have such a hard time going back. My husband had a tide chart with him and decided that if we timed it right and if we went a little faster than we had been, we would be able to get to the Skookumchuck Narrows before the tide came in, and it should be slack tide, and there would just be a little bit of waves instead of the rapids that it's known for. Now, the Skookumchuck Narrows is a place where the ocean is squeezed through, the land comes in and it's squeezed through that narrow passage at over 200 billion gallons in the tide time. It can go at speeds of up to 33 kilometers per hour. So it makes some really great rapids, which are great to watch from the shore. My biggest fear about going on this trip was not being in the kayak or paddling the kayak. It was the thought of falling into the freezing cold water that had me paralyzed. So we decided, let's try it. It's gonna be easier and slack tide, we should be okay. So the next 2 hours, I worked hard. Every single paddle, I dug as hard as I could, and every single time I said, I can do this, I can do this. We made good time between the wind and the current, and paddling hard, of course, and we got to just before the Skookumchuck Narrows and took a little bit of a break and looked up ahead, and our jaws dropped as we realized that this was not slack tide. We'd either miscalculated or we'd made better time than we thought, and it was running harder than we expected. So we looked at it and went, we should be okay if we go on the edge. It's, you know, running pretty all right there. So we did that. Well, it was all going great until Michael was sucked into that eddy. And you guys know now that he popped out fine, but in that moment, I was thinking, my little box is comfortable. I am happy with that box. I'm never gonna do this challenge thing again. If I can just get my feet planted on dry ground, I'm gonna stay where I am. However, my husband decided, I did that first challenge. She can do as many more as she wants to. And all the time, in the last 21 years, he has challenged me. And he has encouraged me that I am capable. And I am now at the point where I know I can do it. And I challenge myself with things like this, joining Toastmasters. Something that all of you have done as well. As we get out of our comfort zones and push those borders farther and farther to grow ourselves, we all experience a greater life. My 18-year-old self would never recognize my 40-year-old self. But I'm really glad that my 20-year-old self got out of my comfort zone, got in that kayak, took that trip, and I'm really happy about where the journey has taken and will continue to take me.